Hi, I'm Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate how to make this beautiful friendship star quilt that's hanging behind me. So let's take a look at it, okay? All right, there are 5 friendship stars in here, and then in between I just have plain background fabric. Now you'll notice that this is a 2-color quilt, but you don't have to do it that way. You can make each star a different color and each border piece a different color. So it's a triple border. There's one strip that goes around here, here, and here, and they get progressively larger as we go along. So let's go over what you need to make this quilt. Okay, so the finished size of this quilt is 52 by 52. Out of your fabric A, which is my blue that I'm using, you'll need 3 yards of fabric A. Out of fabric A, you're going to cut 5 3.5-inch squares, 5 6-inch squares. And then out of fabric A, this you're going to cut your border. And by the way, your border will be cut after all of your stars are made and stitched together. So you're going to save this for the very end to cut. But out of it, you're going to need 2 2.5-inch by 29-inch strips, 2 2.5-inch wide by 33-inch, and then 2 more of 8.5 by 41 inches, and then 2 8.5 by 56 inches. And then one more that you need to cut out of fabric A is 5 strips of binding that are 5 of them 2.5 inches by 42, and for some reason I have it twice here, but you only need to do 5 of them. Now fabric B, that's the white, the background fabric, you're going to need 1 yard, and you'll cut out 20 3.5-inch squares, 5 6-inch squares, and 2 4.5 by 39-inch squares, and 2 41-inch by 2 4.5 by 41-inch strips. Now you're going to need fabric for the back, and you're going to need to get a size that's 56 by 56, and that'll take a little bit of calculating on your part. I'll go over more of that on the end. And your cotton batting piece also needs to be 56 by 56. Okay, so now let's go over what you need to do. So take both of your fabric A and B 6-inch squares. Now you want to bring the front sides together. So this is my back of my fabric A, this is the back of fabric B. Bring front sides together. Then do a 1/4-inch seam on all 4 sides. Now I'm about to show you another way to do a half square triangle. So you're going to take a ruler and put it corner to corner, and then cut it, and take it the other way, line it up, and then cut. And you're going to wind up with 4 of your half square triangles. Okay, so now you want to take them to your ironing board, and with the dark side up, you want to unfold and press, pushing the seam towards the dark fabric. Press all of them. Now once you've got them all pressed, then you're going to square these to 3.5 inches square. So take the diagonal line on your ruler, right there, and place it on the seam. Now I'm centering that 3.5 square area in the center of the block. So I have a little bit of fabric sticking out on all 4 sides. So you're going to trim this side off, and then trim this side off. Now you want to take this corner and bring it around to there. Now line up your 3.5 inch line, right here and here, and put it on the 2 previously cut edges, which is over here. Line up that diagonal line, make sure everything's nice and straight, and then cut your last 2 sides off. Now do this on all of your half square triangles, all of them. Square them all up. Now you're going to lay out your squares in this order. Okay, now up here in the 4 corners, you're placing your B fabric 3.5 inch squares. And then here in the middle is your A fabric 3.5 inch square. And then take all of your half square triangles, or 4 of them per block, and place them in this order. Now I want you to notice that the point goes from here down to this corner. So it's opposite. And then come over here, and this point goes down over to this corner. So make sure you have it in that order. Make sure all your points are going in the right direction. Then you're going to take the squares in each row and stitch them together. So stitch a 1/4 inch seam, stitch a 1/4 inch seam. Do that in row 2 as well as row 3. So get them all stitched together. Then go to your ironing board and press your seams on the back side, all the seams. Then you're going to lift it up to the front and press the seams on top, pushing them towards those seams so that they go in one direction. Okay, so now I'm going to turn all the rows over because I want you to look at something, because this is always important. The rows have their seams going in different directions. So this row here, the seam is going that way, and the middle row is going that way, and then the last row here is going in the same direction as the first row, going that way. And you want to do that so that when you stitch your rows together, the seams will match up really well. So now you want to lay the rows on top of each other and get those seams to where they're really close to each other. It should feel nice and flat in there. And make sure that the seam on the bottom is going in the opposite direction than the seam on top. I usually place a pin to hold them, so put pins at your seams to hold them in place, then stitch 1/4 inch across here, and then unfold, and then do the next one. Lay it on top, match up those seams, place pins to hold them, stitch 1/4 inch. Then go to your ironing board and press the seam on top, both seams, and then unfold and press the seams on top. And I usually try to press the seams so that they're all going in one direction. Okay, now you want to make all 5 star blocks before you continue to do anything. So get all 5 star blocks put together. After you've got them put together, now you need to square them to the same size, because I pretty much guarantee you that they're all going to be a little different from each other. I've never had all my blocks come out exactly the same size. So you want to measure them, and whichever block is the smallest is what you're going to square the rest of them to, unless you've got a block that's really off, it's really small, it's really jagged. You might have to rebuild that block. So you want to check all your edges and then square, and then turn it around. Line up your ruler again on the 2 sides you just cut, here and here, and then trim anything off on your last 2 sides. So you want to square all of your blocks. Okay, now I'm going to go over how to lay it all out. So I'm going to work in miniature now. Pretend that these 5 squares here are my stars. These are my star blocks. In between each star block is a 9.5 inch square of fabric B. So you've got one here, one here, one here, and one here. All right? Now you're going to measure this quilt to see what size it came out to. So start measuring from this raw edge to the raw edge of this square over here. Whatever that distance is, you're going to add an 1.5 inches to that. Then you're going to take your strips, lay them on 2 opposite sides of each other. Stitch them on 1/4 inch right along here. Then press your seams open, and I usually press my seams towards the border, okay? Now this is your 2.5 inch wide border is what you're putting on here. Then you're going to do it here on this side too. Put it on opposite sides of each other. Stitch it on and press. Then at all 4 corners, you're going to stitch that excess piece of border fabric off. So line it up and trim it off. Do that at all 4 corners. Now you're going to measure again. So measure from here all the way over to here. Add an 1.5 inches to that measurement and lay down your next border strip. Stitch it on 1/4 inch. Then press, unfold, and press again. So let's look at this side. I've got it all done, okay? Now you want to trim the excess off at all 4 corners. You're doing this on opposite sides of each other. Trim that off. So trim all 4 corners. So now you've got your first border on. Remember, this is the 2.5 inch border. Now we're going to go to the 4.5 inch wide border of fabric B. So now you're going to measure from here all the way to here, this edge. Add an 1.5 inches in that to that and stitch on that border. Go to the opposite side and put on that border. Then line up your ruler, trim the excess off. Remember, you have it stitched on first and then pressed before you trim anything off. And then you're going to measure from here all the way over to here. Add an 1.5 inches to that measurement and put on your next piece, okay? Then after you've stitched and pressed, you're going to trim the excess off at each corner. Now you're going to take your measuring tape and go from here all the way down to here. Add an 1.5 inches of that. Stitch it on opposite sides of each other. Okay? So now, after you've got it stitched on, you're going to trim this excess off at all 4 corners, and now you're going to measure from here all the way over to here. Add an 1.5 inches to that. Put it on, stitch, press, and trim all 4 corners. And then you are done, okay? This is a relatively simple quilt to make. It's very big, but it's actually pretty easy to do. We're not doing a bunch of little tiny pieces. Now, once you've got this quilt top put together, it's now ready to do your layering. So that's where you put your cotton batting on and your fabric for the back. If you need instructions on how to do that, click on the link in the upper right hand corner. Then once you've got that done, your quilt is now ready for your top stitching. We also refer to it as machine quilting. If you need instructions on how to do that, click on the next link in the upper right hand corner. And the final step would be to put on your binding, and that is fabric that's wrapped around the raw edges of the quilt. And again, if you need instructions, click on the last link in the upper right hand corner. And I want to draw your attention to one more thing over my shoulder. It's a Friendship Star American flag placemat. And so if you're interested in making placemats for our Memorial Day or 4th of July events that go on, click on the link, the next link in the upper right hand corner. Now, to keep informed on all my future videos, you need to click on subscribe. And there's a red button down there in that lower right hand corner that says subscribe. And then in the upper left hand corner is a round picture of my face. That's also a subscribe button. So you click on either one of those. Once you do that, YouTube's going to prompt you for your email address. So enter that information, and the next time I have a new video, YouTube sends you a brief email with a big old button in the center. You click on it and it takes you directly to my latest video. I'm Cheryl, and I'm so glad you came to my sewing room, and I'll see you next time, and happy sewing.